So first of all, I'd like to thank the Burlington Sustainable Development Committee very much for inviting me tonight to this active transportation panel. Quick word about myself. I started off as a family doctor. After a few years of family practice, though, I decided to go back to university and specialize in public health and preventive medicine. That was 20 years ago, so I've been there ever since. You'll see I've entitled my talk, "Cycling Shouldn't Be a Handicap," and you'll see soon why I chose those words. And just to start that spark in your heads, think about this here. Have you ever thought that getting into a car as a driver is like becoming a superhero with superpowers, a sort of cybernetic organism, a cyborg, a human machine? Well, what about those people who aren't in cars? First of all, a quick disclaimer. These are my words. I'm not expressing any opinions of the Region of Halton, notwithstanding that they're my employer. Then a declaration of competing interests. I drive, I cycle, I walk, but I don't gain any financial advantage from any of those, aside from I try to save money by not driving. So I'll be talking, the first point I'm going to make is that active transportation is a good thing. Next, I'm going to argue that pedestrians and cyclists should have equal opportunities to motorists, despite their relative impairments and disabilities when compared with motorists' advantages. Think again of that human machine in the car. I'm also going to point out that healthy choices should be easy choices, and that cycling, you can think of it in terms of impairments and disabilities. So I'll outline what I mean with that. And then finally, well, if cycling does have impairments and disabilities, how do we prevent it from being a handicap so that cyclists have the same opportunities as everyone else? So why is active transportation a good thing? Well, it decreases air and water pollution. People who participate decrease global warming. They decrease traffic noise pollution. They help to decrease traffic congestion. They decrease roadway costs. They decrease parking congestion and space needs. You improve your own physical health. You improve your own mental health. This will help you attend your workplace better. Walking and cycling are basic mobility ways to allow all people to participate in society, including those who don't have access to motorized vehicles. Walkable and bikeable places can often have more economic activity. Of course, you'd be a good role model for children, you'd save money, and finally, and you see this a lot as a cyclist, you'd save animals from becoming roadkill. Now, I wanted to, so these words here, impairment, disability, handicap, because I'm going to be using that as an analogy. So, if somebody has a disability, and I'm going to show an example, you can change the surroundings of that person so that it doesn't become a handicap. Now, for example, if you have a spinal cord injury that leads to paralysis of the legs, that's an impairment. The disability then is your inability to walk. Well, that can be mitigated with a wheelchair, but if public buildings, say, only have stair access, you'll still be handicapped, even if you have the wheelchair. So one can get rid of the handicap in this instance by ensuring that buildings are wheelchair accessible, or by providing services in other ways, for instance, over the internet, by telephone, and so on. So compared to those super beings in motor vehicles, pedestrians and cyclists are handicapped in the car-oriented built environments. Shouldn't they have equal opportunities to motorists? Well, when I said earlier healthy choices should be easy choices, what I mean with that is that if walking and cycling and integrated with a good public transit system, if these things were fast, convenient, safe, pleasant, and affordable, then these would be easy choices. And they have the bonus that they're healthy for individuals and for the environment, meaning for all of us. So if a group of people, in this case pedestrians and cyclists, are handicapped in the current environment, then the group should have extra support and attention until its members' opportunities are equal to those of the majority, in this case motor vehicle drivers. But to get there, to decrease the inequities, you have to make this group a priority. So let me get into what impairments and disabilities there are if you look at a cyclist compared to a car driver. First of all, and we all know this, cyclists aren't as strong as motor vehicle engines. There's a big difference in power versus weight. Now, a fit cyclist working hard can do a steady output of about 1/5 to about 1/4 of a horsepower. 1/5 to 1/4 of a horsepower. Now, let's say a rider plus his or her bike plus the baggage that the rider they're carrying, let's say that equals 200 pounds. So therefore, for every horsepower, there are 800 to 1,000 pounds. Now, imagine if your car, which could weigh 4,000 or more pounds, only had a 4-horsepower engine. Well, you too would worry about having to accelerate, and it would take an awful long time, and you'd worry on every hill, and you'd have to really gear down, and your speeds would be quite slow. So point one, cyclists don't have a strong engine. Point two, cyclists aren't as streamlined. We worry, as motor vehicles, we worry a lot about wind and air resistance. So, I love high school. I love high school physics, so you'll have to forgive me. This is the equation for drag, for wind resistance. And there are just two key things in there. The CD, that's drag coefficient, and that barely that's a number that sort of describes the shape of something. You know, is it a clumsy shape in terms of going through the air, or is it a very smooth shape? A is the frontal area. Density of air, well, we don't worry too much about that, but velocity, as velocity increases, the drag actually goes up as the square of the velocity, so velocity changes a lot. Now, why am I saying all of this? Because I've got some numbers for that drag coefficient. So that's the number that tells you how slippery you are through the air. And a cyclist in a upright touring position has a CD of 1.1. And if you compare that to a car nowadays, 0.3, clumsier shaped cars up to 0.5. A truck, on the other hand, is more like a cyclist in terms of the coefficient of drag. Now, on the other hand, a cyclist and the bike, they don't have much, they're not very big, right? So if you combine the two things, the thing is still, a cyclist has as much wind resistance as a whole car. But remember, we only have that 1/5 of a horsepower. So once again, imagine if your car only had 4 horsepower to fight wind resistance, and you again see your maximum speed would be very low, and headwinds would be a real problem. So, impairments, disabilities. Now, the other points are as follows. Cyclists only have 2 wheels, and as everybody knows, when even one of those starts skidding sideways, the odds of you falling are very high. And then also in crosswinds, for example, that instability becomes a problem. Another aspect in terms of stability as compared to motor vehicles is that tires are built very lightly. Now there's a reason for that, because you want them to not weigh much, because that would contribute to the overall weight, and you also don't want them to weigh much because they're like a flywheel. And if you have a lot of weight on the outside of a flywheel, it's harder to spin up, so it takes more work to get it to a higher speed. Now, tires are also narrow to save weight and reduce drag. Wheels are large in diameter so that you can deal with rough roads better, but that worsens the air drag, and it also worsens that flywheel effect. And then having light tires doesn't cushion you much from shock either compared to cars. Now, cyclists aren't protected as protected as motor vehicle drivers. They don't have a body. Now, of course, we have a body, but we don't have a steel body around us like a car. So that means we don't have crumple zones. There would be no point having a seatbelt, airbags. There's no protection aside from a helmet in a crash. And remember, here's my high school physics again, that when you're dealing with a car, say as in opposition, a car has a lot more mass than you do, and even a little bit of velocity, and you have to square that up, means it's got a whole lot of energy, and you just don't want to have to collide with that. Also, by not having, a big body like the motor vehicles, that means you're small in size, you can only carry small reflectors, you can only carry relatively small light, you're less visible, you have more difficulty seeing obstructions with a weak headlight. The less metal you have also means you may not be able to trigger the traffic signal loop detectors. And so you have an awful hard time if you come to a red light that only changes when the loop detector detects something, or making a left turn, similarly when there's a left turn signal. Also compared to a car, you just can't park and lock your doors. All parts of the bicycle are exposed to weather and unfortunately to theft. And so you only have your own clothing to protect you from the weather. And furthermore, again, you're not surrounded by steel and glass and an air filter, so you're fully exposed to pollutants from motor vehicles and noise. So these are the impairments and disabilities. But that's fine. We can live with those. But the thing is, how can we make cycling the easy choice? Well, we can ask ourselves about each of these impairments or disabilities, what can we change about the environment to make it more friendly and to make cycling easier? So the first one I talked to you about was low power to weight ratio. Remember, that was just that 1/5 horsepower. Well, so when you're designing a cycling route, you don't want the cycling route to have to go through a neighborhood where there's a stop sign at every intersection. You want to be able to keep rolling. Or you don't want to design the cycling route so that there are a lot of hazards or places that are hazardous, like where you have to slow down and watch out. You only got a 1/5 horsepower to accelerate back up. You want to create cycling routes that choose the least number of hills. Now, similarly with the low power to the wind resistance, to the drag. Okay, give us the closest, the least distance from A to B. And then also, it really helps to have lots of trees around because they do shelter the street from headwinds and from crosswinds. The two wheels, well, ensure in the winter good snow and ice removal, and in the summer, the places where cycles ride and corners especially, please make sure that they're swept of sand, gravel, and other debris. Joints, cracks, especially that run the same way as you're riding and so on, are real terrors sometimes for cyclists. So ensure even surfaces and smooth transitions. The thin tires, again, we don't want to have punctures all the time, flat tires, which are a nuisance to change. So cleaning frequently. I notice after car crashes, there may be glass on the road, and no one seems to have the responsibility for cleaning that up. Similarly, if in their rush the recycling companies drop a bottle, no one seems to sweep that up either, and that's right at the side of the road. And then cracks, potholes, sunken manhole covers, and sewer grates. These are all hazards. They can make you fall, and those are things to think about. Now, the business about not having a body, well, let's ensure that the speed limits that we do have are safe and are enforced. Marked bicycle lanes, separated paths, intersection bike boxes, bicycle-specific traffic signals that are easy to trigger, traffic calming. All these are great things that help reduce the risk of collisions. We can get back to this. I hope somebody asks me about multi-use paths and sidewalks because they do have limitations. Ensure good lighting for at night or, well, in the fall and so on when the sun sets early. So for storing the bicycle, or when you reach your destination, sheltered, visible, secure bike lock areas for commuters are good. And even the short-term parking should have secure racks in highly visible areas. And in terms of that breathing and all those exhaust fumes, let's continue to support programs like Drive Clean, encourage electric cars, hybrids. A little thing that always bugs me is, why do so many vehicles have their exhausts on the right side? Even just that extra 6 feet of distance can help dilute that exhaust a bit. And separating bicycles from motor vehicle lanes as much as possible is helpful. The destination, sheltered parking areas, because yeah, you're in the weather, it's nice to, even if it's raining, while you're setting up your bike, not immediately get wet. Change rooms, lockers, showers. And finally, I just want to add, in terms of making the healthy choice, cycling the easy choice, encourage and reward it. These are just a few ideas. Again, highly visible, safe, sheltered, no charge parking close to the destination entrance. As an employer, think about providing a company or rental cars so that employees don't have to own a car or a second car just for the sake of occasional business use. And another one, and I actually wrote to Revenue Canada about this, but they said, oh, that's a political issue. Why not have mileage rates for people who use their bicycle for business? If I take my car, I get paid 53 cents a kilometer. If I ride my bicycle on business, it's 0, even though you wear out tires and so on. In the UK, they pay 20p a mile. That's what their revenue agency allows. It's all in their legislation. So, active transportation is a good thing. Pedestrians and cyclists should have equal opportunities to motorists. Healthy choices should be easy choices. And cycling's impairments and disabilities, they don't have to become handicaps. If we have equal opportunity in mind and we consult the users a lot, then the built environment can be made supportive and safe for cyclists and pedestrians. And I want to thank you on that note. So thank you very much.